Here's a summary of the news of Israel being struck by rockets and Bibi's appearance in Arad on Fox News. Let's check this out.
The clock is ticking. President Trump giving Iran an urgent ultimatum. Open the Strait of Hormuz or face an attack on your power plants.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst just spoke with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu moments ago, and he joins us now. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Right now we are in the southern Israeli city of Arad, and I want to just quickly show you behind me. This is where an Iranian ballistic missile slammed into a residential area overnight. It was a direct impact that injured more than 100 people. You see these apartments totally reduced to rubble, a bus there totally destroyed in the aftermath of this Iranian strike. These strikes have continued throughout the day, and here in Arad, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking exclusively with Fox News about the situation. I asked him about that post from President Trump overnight. Take a listen.
If you want proof that Iran endangers the entire world, the last 48 hours have given it. In the last 48 hours, Iran targeted a civilian area. They're doing that as a mass murder weapon. Luckily, no one was killed, but that's due to luck, not their intention. Their intention is to murder civilians. Second, they fired on Jerusalem right next to the holy sites of the three monotheistic faiths, the Western Wall, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And by dint of a miracle, again, none of them were hurt, but they were targeting the holy sites of the three major monotheistic religions. Third, they fired an intercontinental ballistic missile on Diego Garcia. That's 4,000 kilometers. I've been warning all the time. They have now the capacity to reach deep into Europe. They already have fired on a European country, Cyprus. They are putting everyone in their sights. And fourth, they're stopping a maritime international route, energy route, and trying to blackmail the entire world. What more proof do you need that this regime that threatens the entire world has to be stopped? Israel and the United States are working together for the entire world. And it's time to see the leaders of the rest of the countries join up. I'm happy to say that I can see some of them beginning to move in that direction, but more is needed. President Trump's call to have the international community confront this terrorist fanatic regime of zealots, that is a call not only for the security of America and the security of Israel, it's for the security of the entire world. And it's time for them to act.
Sir, what will your response be to this attack on Israeli civilians?
We're responding with great force, but not on civilians. We're going after the regime. We're going after the IRGC, this criminal gang, and we're going after them personally, their leaders, their installations, their economic assets. We're going after them very strongly.
What does victory look like in this campaign?
Well, we've defined two clear goals. One is to break completely their nuclear program, break completely their missile program, break completely their capacity to produce the components for both of these programs. We're well on our way on achieving it. We've also set a goal of creating conditions for the Iranian people to overthrow this tyranny that has tormented them and made life miserable and is making life miserable for the entire world. And I hope we achieve that too.
Overnight, President Trump said that if in 48 hours the Iranians don't open the Strait of Hormuz, that there will be strikes against the power grids in Iran. Will you participate in those strikes, and what do you think should happen next in this campaign?
I think President Trump knows exactly what he's doing, and whatever we do together, and as far as possible in confidence.
As the Prime Minister was leaving, I asked him about President Trump, and he talked about the great relationship that these two leaders have amid Operation Epic Fury. The operation has now entered week 4, and we do anticipate heavier strikes against the Iranian regime in the hours and days ahead. Guys?
So the Prime Minister said that he was hopeful that some of the other leaders of other countries are starting to line up and take this seriously about trying to open up the Strait of Hormuz and bring some order to Iran. Who do you think he was talking about there?
He's talking broadly about Gulf countries, and I spoke over the weekend with a different source who talked about the fact that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Bahrain, they're looking at the attacks being launched against their countries by the Iranian regime with both drones and ballistic missiles, and they understand that the situation may have to change very quickly. And so there are conversations, we understand, according to our reporting behind the scenes, for these Gulf countries to possibly get more directly involved and take offensive action against the Iranian regime that is not only threatening their energy infrastructure, but also their civilian population. Guys?
And Trey, so you asked there at the end, the Prime Minister, about what happens in 48 hours. Obviously, he is saying that President Trump is going to do what he says he has to do, and Israel will be there with them. But walk us through just a little bit of what that may look like, because if we do 48 hours, we're talking about roughly by Tuesday, we're seeing something we haven't seen yet in this conflict.
Absolutely. And look, we have to zoom out here to look at the reality on the ground, to view the battlefield exactly as it is. And right now, the Iranians still have the ability to respond to U.S. and Israeli strikes in the time and way that they choose to. We saw that last week when the Iranians responded to the Israeli strikes against the South Pars gas field. They immediately went after the Ras Laffan facility in Qatar, just over the Persian Gulf. We saw the strike that took place in southern Israel just yesterday, after reports indicate the United States went after the Natanz nuclear facility. The Iranians responded with ballistic missiles very close to where Israel houses its nuclear research centers. And so this war is escalating in some ways, and there is an escalation ladder. And so the question is, if the United States and Israel do strike the power grid and these power stations in Iran, what the response will be from the Iranian regime. And so we don't know what will come next in the days ahead, but the Israelis and the Americans are bracing for the real reality that this war continues to change and to morph in ways that will threaten U.S. forces in the region and allies across the Middle East.
Trey, you say we don't know what happens after, or, you know, if these power centers are attacked. What do you expect? I mean, I'm sure you have sources. You just were talking to Benjamin Netanyahu. Somebody must be, you know, wargaming this out. What would happen? I mean, what is likely? Is the target going to be Israel? What have the Gulf states said? And, you know, could it be their desalinization plants? What could we expect next?
The short answer is that we don't know, but over the past week and a half, I've spoken with both President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and both leaders have indicated there are options on the table, possibly that the public doesn't know about. And I think that's a very important thing to discuss here. What we're able to know publicly and what President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu discussed publicly is just a fraction of what they have behind the scenes and what options they have on the table to respond militarily against Iran if they continue attacks like the one that we saw behind me here that injured more than 100 people in a single strike. And so the short answer is that we don't know, but there are not only a variety of options as it relates to energy infrastructure inside of Iran, but also the Strait of Hormuz. The president has been very clear he wants to get this critical waterway open again, and the Iranians have a lot of anti-ship missiles and things that are just along the coast, and the United States and Israel have the ability to go after these storage facilities and these launching positions.
You know, I was interested in your question at the end there where the prime minister listed the two goals that he wanted to see accomplished. One was eliminating their nuclear program and their missile program. And the second one was regime change, which is quite different from what President Trump's very focused goal has been from the beginning, including his latest, the reports that he's willing to work with the regime if they agree to all of these points about eliminating their missile program, bringing in inspectors, eliminating the nuclear, their nuclear program. So that strikes to me as a pretty big difference between the goals that Netanyahu has and the goals that the U.S. has.
Absolutely, and there are a number of points that the Israelis and the Americans are looking at from different angles, I would say. We should note that over the past week, we've seen significant shaping operations on the ground when it comes to the specific strikes that were conducted by Israeli forces against the Iranian regime. In a period of about 48 hours, we saw Ali Larijani, the secretary of Iran's National Security Council, taken out in an airstrike. We saw Commander Soleimani, the head of the besieged forces, this is a wing of the IRGC, also taken out. And then Ismail Khatib, which is the intelligence minister of Iran. All of these individuals played a similar but different role in the crackdown on protesters earlier this year. And so the Israelis are clearly trying to lay the foundation for, if a decision is made, to encourage protesters to take to the streets of Iran once again and demonstrate against the regime there. And so both the United States and Israel certainly do have similar but different goals as it relates to this operation. But there are a lot of crossover points, and the Strait of Hormuz is one, understanding that the impact ripples across the global energy economy.
Yeah, and they also have a different tolerance for war, right? I mean, they have been under attack, Israel, for a long time, and their tolerance for this type of chaos that comes from war is much higher than the United States or even, I would say, their Gulf neighbors. So how do they square that? I mean, if you're in a partnership with somebody in a war that has, as Charlie said, perhaps different goals, Trump maybe having more limited objectives than Israel, which don't include, as far as I know, regime change, although he would welcome it maybe if it happened, but it's not, as far as we know, not on there. But also this tolerance for war, where you have war-weary America who loves Trump, wants to, trust him to take charge of this, but also to manage it with a partner who maybe has different objectives.
Look, I think the Israeli people understand the goals of President Trump in the Middle East. He was able to end the war between Israel and Hamas and bring the hostages home, something that was a very personal thing for the Israeli public. And not only was he able to do that, he was able to create the Board of Peace that brought together these regional countries that previously weren't working together with a goal for stability and peace across the Middle East. And the Iranian regime was seen as the last hurdle in those efforts by President Trump. And so I think the Israeli people really understand the vision that President Trump has for the region, and they understand that they will benefit if they can make it through this war relatively unharmed. And the reality is there are Israeli civilians dying. There are missiles raining down on this country, like behind me, where more than 100 people were injured overnight. But understanding the relationship between the United States and Israel, and understanding the popular support that even President Trump has on the ground here in Israel. We hear it from people when they hear that we're from the United States. They say, President Trump, thank you. They're thanking him because they understand he is taking out an existential threat to the Israeli people, and that is the Iranian regime, a regime that has not only threatened directly Israel with ballistic missiles and drones in the past, but also through its proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen. And so the Israeli people see the effect of war, but they also are willing to pay a price. They understand that war comes with a price, but it is a price they are willing to pay.
Yeah. All right, Trey Inks live for us in Rod, Israel. Trey, great interview. We'll check back in with you throughout the morning.
That was Trey Yingst, an excellent. I didn't even want to interrupt him, even though I had some commentary, but such an excellent perspective. Just a few things that I think were not said there. Number one, Prime Minister Netanyahu, one time when he said that it was a miracle that more people haven't been injured in Israel. Another time he said it was by force of luck or sheer luck. The word God has got to be part of the discourse. Hashem, God, and you know what? People around the world respect you when you say the IDF and myself are doing our best and God is protecting us. And that's a good thing to say. That's number one. Number two, just like God isn't always mentioned and he should be, so too other players in the story are not mentioned. And I do wonder in my heart how much of this is also proxy war within itself. There are proxies, but what is this war that we see? What is it a proxy war of? And I really do think it is about a globe dominated by AI, led by China and other players like Russia, North Korea, Iran, where the world turns into a type of serfdom. And Israel, which is the original liberation nation that exited an exodus from Egypt and brought the idea of liberty to the world, with the modern liberty banner carrier, the United States, together with the modern reborn state of Israel, is fighting against that neo-totalitarianism that wants to take over the world. I think that this war is about energy. I think it's about mind control. I think it's about AI. I think it's about Chinification of this world. I think it's about awakening the United States to the memory of the fight for liberty. I think it's really about a much bigger picture and a spiritual picture as well.